chapter 3, because from the previous section, we find that we need more time in this chapter. So next week, we need to continue with this chapter, and we may have to cut some chapters later so that we leave room for these fundamental skills. So we'll talk about that when we get to the end of today's class. So multiplicities is where we left, right, from Monday. And this is where we really struggle in interpreting multiplicities. So to help you better interpret these, I created a little cheat sheet for you, or a little trick for you to better, apply or how to better interpret these multiplicities. So let's say we have two classes, A and B, and they have this association with multiplicities. So if we want to interpret the multiplicity placed next to A, which is represented as the lowercase a and lowercase b, then we would say, in this case, each b is associated with a to b of a, okay, with minimum a and maximum b of a. And similarly, if we want to interpret the multiplicity placed next to b, which is this lowercase c or d, we would say each a is associated with minimum c and maximum d of b. Okay, so this is a little bit difficult to say, but let's look at some examples, right? So I know that last time we practiced interpretation using this stock exchange example, but let's go through this one more time so that we can pick up this knowledge. So number one, right, each stock is associated with 0 or more stock exchanges. That's correct. Number two, right, each stock exchange has 1 or more stocks. That's correct. Number three, okay, from here it says each transaction is associated with only 1 stock. That's correct. So remember last time I showed you, I revised this 1 and only 1 into 1 and multiple. 4, right, each stock is associated with 0 or multiple transactions. Number 5, right, each broker can have 0 or more transactions. Good. Number 6, each transaction can only be executed by 1 broker. Okay, that's very good. And I have other practices. So we are going to learn these like sales process and purchase process later in later chapters, but I'm bringing in those diagrams here so that we can use it as a practice. So here, with for multiplicities, with or without parentheses, that's okay. So for A, let's write each sale is associated with 1 or more inventories, and that makes sense, right? Because you have to sell something. That's good. B, each inventory is associated with 0 or 1 sale. So that means that inventory is either sold or not sold, right? So that also makes sense. C, I would say each person has 0 or more sales, right? Because it's easier to say like at least 1. I don't find at least 0 very commonly used, right? So you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that what you said is correct. Just different, like a phrasing will make it sound better. Like each salesperson is involved with 0 or multiple sales. Okay. D, right? A sale is executed or sold by 1 salesperson. That's correct. Number E, right? Customer is associated with 1 or more sales, or you can say a customer can conduct 1 or more purchases. Okay, number F, each sale is associated with 1 customer, or you can say each purchase is associated with 1 customer. Okay, that's correct. I also have other examples. So here I can do the first because here the cash, let's interpret it as cash account, right? So here A, I will do each cash receipt can be deposited into 1 and only 1 cash account. So here cash receipt, you can think of it as the checks that you can write, okay? So then followed my example. Let's look at B. Each cash account is associated with 0 or multiple cash receipts. So if we use like plain English to interpret this, this is saying that each cash account can receive multiple deposits, right? Or it doesn't have to or it doesn't have to receive any cash receipt. Okay, number C, yeah, each customer is associated with 1 or more cash receipt, or you can say each customer can write 1 or more checks. So let's say this is the customer paid by cash and they write checks, right, to avoid paying the to make it simpler. Then it says that a customer can write 1 or more checks or multiple checks. D, right? Each cash receipt or each check is written by only 1 customer. Okay. E, yeah, each cashier can process 0 or multiple checks or cash receipts. That's good. F, right? Each cash receipt is processed by only 1 cashier. Okay, that's very good. So here we are using different examples to show you like this is how we apply that little rule we have here, right? So whenever you need to interpret a multiplicity next to a class, this is a very simple way for you to remember how to do this. So that's about identifying or interpreting multiplicities. So I got into a discussion earlier with one student. They got very confused about this multiplicity 1 and only 1 because some students ask me, okay, does it mean that there needs to be only 1 cash account? So here, let me just better explain here. So let's look at this cash to cash receipt relationship, right? So we said that for B, this means for each cash account, let's just think of any bank account, right? Any bank account can take, doesn't have to take any deposit, or it can take multiple deposits, right? That should be, that should come from our daily experience directly. And for A, we say that for each check or each deposit, that can only go into 1 bank account, right? Because, for example, if we have a check, let's assume that you cannot break the check down into 2 separate parts, right? You only deposit that amount as a whole. So in that case, you can only deposit that into 1 account. So here, when we are talking about these relationships, we do not say how many cash accounts can there be or how many cash receipts can there be. We are purely just modeling the relationship between the class, right? Because although here the multiplicity is 1 next to the cash account, there can be multiple cash accounts. It's just that in this relationship between cash and cash receipts, for 1 cash receipt, it can only go to 1 cash account. Okay, I hope this make it more can set the confusion, get the confusion away, right? So here, this 101 doesn't mean that there can only be 1 cash account. It's just that in this relationship, in this association, 1 cash receipt can only be deposited into that particular cash account. Okay. Any questions here? Okay, so the next section of the class deals with different relationship types. So we learned how to interpret the multiplicities, and for us to easily describe what kind of relationship is between 2 classes, we usually classify them into 3 types. We have one-to-one relationship, one-to-many relationship, and many-to-many relationship. And so to give you an example, so let's look at this cash to cash receipt relationship, right? So here we have a one-to-many relationship because 1 cash account can take multiple cash receipts, whereas one cash receipt can only go to one cash account. So this is called a one-to-many relationship. And example of a one-to-one relationship can be our social security number and our names, because one social security number can only correspond to one person, right? And one person can only have one social security number. So that's an example of one-to-one relationship. And many-to-many relationship, let me give you an example. So we can see this stock exchange and stocks. So we say that one stock exchange can have multiple stocks, and one stock can be listed in multiple stock exchanges. So in this case, we're talking about a many-to-many relationship. So to help you better, directly identify what kind of relationship that is, I also have a little cheat sheet here. So let's say if we have two classes and this is their multiplicity, and we can just look at the maximum value of each multiplicity. So in this case, the maximum value for A's multiplicity is this lowercase b, and the maximum value for the multiplicity for B is this lowercase d. So in this case, we would say this is a B to D relationship. So let me give you an example, right? Let's say when we look at the first, this A to B, we will look at this maximum value 1 and the maximum value 1 next to B. So this would be a one-to-one relationship, right? So you can just directly apply this little rule here. So let's also go through the practice together. So I did the first one, right? How about the second one? So what kind of relationship is between A and B for the second item? Right, one-to-one, right? Because the maximum value for the A's multiplicity is 1, and that for B is 1. So that's a one-to-one. Okay, that's correct. The next one-to-many, that's correct. The last one-to-many, correct. We have more. Next, the first one-to-one, that's correct. One-to-one, okay. One-to-many, yes. And the fourth one-to-many, correct. Okay, the first many-to-one, yeah, so that's correct. So whenever we look at many-to-one, just for convenience, we can just say it's one-to-many. Okay, they are the same. Okay, so whenever you see many-to-one, you can just directly say that's one-to-many. Yeah, one-to-many, correct. Many-to-many, yeah, exactly. The fourth one, many-to-many. Okay, correct. The first one, many-to-one, and it's easier to say one-to-many, right? But that's the same thing. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, and then that's equivalent to one-to-many, right? Okay, and then many-to-many. Okay. So it seems that you guys are doing a great job, like identifying the relationship types. So now let's look at a platform that can, where we can draw these UML diagrams. So if you have my slides open, you can just directly open, click this link. If not, you can just type in this lucid.app. And then let's go to this website. So if it's your first time using this platform, you may need to register using your email. So I just do you can either use your personal email or your school email, either way works. And then I believe they ask you to choose certain questions about yourself. For example, are you a student or are you working, something like that? You just have to go through those questions. And then I believe after you log in, you should be able to see, let's see. Yeah, you should be able to see a dashboard like this after you log in and register. So I will give you 2 minutes to complete the registration and also get to this first front page. And if you are already there, then I I want you to look at the case study, which is on the handout that you have, or you can look at the slides, they are the same. And you can think about the first practice, right? Just think about it. You don't have to do it on the Lucidchart because we are going through this together. So then let's look at this. Okay, we can first learn how to use Lucidchart together first. So if it's your first time using it, and you can create a new diagram by clicking this button called New. This blue button, and then you click on it, and then you go to this Lucidchart and select blank document. So if you click it, then you should be able to open a blank document like this. So like when you get to the registration, right, make sure you just choose the free trial, because for Lucidchart you have several you have like 5 documents for free, so you can always utilize those free documents. Okay, so once we are here, we can see that like the structure is similar to the BPMN diagram, right? We have a blank canvas where we can do our diagram, draw our diagram. And on the left-hand side of this interface, we have a collection of shapes that we can utilize. So if when you open it, you are not seeing the ones that I have here. So you don't have these UML shapes, and that's normal because we have to add it from this shape library. So now let's go to this shape library, which is at the bottom of your left-hand side. So let's click it. And then we can scroll down this list, and you should be able to see this option called UML. So here you click it, and you will see that we can add UML class diagram shapes to this collection. So we can click this Use Selected Shapes. And now these UML diagram shapes will be available in this shape collection. So please let me know if you want me to illustrate this again, just in case you didn't follow me. So to do that, right, you go to this shape library, and then you choose this UML, and then you choose select shapes, and then you should be able to get these different diagrams. Okay. So when we do the UML class diagrams, these shapes within the category of UML class diagram should be the ones that we are focusing on. So for example, the third shape here, that's a class shape. It's purely just like a rectangle with the name class in it. So similar to how we use the BPMN diagram, we can just select it and drag and drop into the blank canvas. And then you have a class, and you can also rename this shape by clicking it, and then you can name it in other ways. So that's the basic of how to get the UML class diagram and how to like put some shapes on this canvas. Okay, so now let's look at the case study that we have. And for this practice, I will guide you through like how to identify a class and how to establish association and get the multiplicity, because it's the first time that we are doing this, right? So I will provide these guidance, and maybe the next time for the second practice, we will invite you guys to come on stage. So let's look at the case together. Dr. Franklin runs a small clinic specializing in family practice. She has many patients, and when the patients visit the clinic, she may perform several tests to diagnose their conditions, and she bills the patient one amount for the visit plus additional amounts for each test. And we assume that each sale or each patient visit could take place without any diagnostic test. That is to say, if a patient visit Dr. Franklin, she will charge them for the visit, right? Even though there was no test. And I think that's also in real life, right? And second, the tests or services are established in the database, in some kind of database before they are used by Dr. Franklin. So this means that you can assume that Dr. Franklin has a list of all kinds of tests in the world, okay? Let's just say that she has a database of all these tests, but she may or may not use them for a particular patient, okay? So that's what this number 2 means. Number 3, patients are established in the database prior to the first patient visit. So this means that, okay, just think about like in real life, how you make a doctor's appointment, right? So for me, let's say I look online, I look at their appointment, like a portal. I put my information via the portal, right? My name, my date of birth, my insurance. So in this case, my information is saved in the doctor's office database, or they regard me as a patient or a potential patient, right? But even though I make appointment, I may not show up. That is to say, although I can be regarded as a patient, but I do not necessarily have to pay my visit, right? So that's to say, like before the patient really visit the doctor, their information will be saved in the database first. Okay, so that's what this means. Now, I will put this case study on the side of the screen and have Lucidchart on the other side so that we can do the look at the case while we are doing the practice. So when I'm doing the screen thing, you can look at the first practice. So the first practice is to say, okay, based on the description that we have, together with the assumptions, let's identify the classes or entities there and their associations. And we want to identify the multiplicities. Okay, so you can think about this while I am making the screen more workable. So I can give a start. Okay, so we say that classes, they basically are collection of things that we want to collect information about, right? Let's say in a sales process, we can create classes of salesperson, customers, invoices, or sales items or inventory, right? And in our case, if I were to identify one class, and then my first option, I will go first. I will say patients. And patients, they are one class here in the description. What about other classes? So then it's your turn. So let's put another class next to it. Make it smaller. Can you guys see that? Okay, that's not too bad. Okay, patients and also tests. So to avoid any confusion later, yes, a little. Okay, so yeah, we'll get to that because yeah, that's a good point. And hold on. So to avoid any confusion later, I will just say types of tests because I don't want to confuse it with like any individual test. I'll just say types of tests. Let's say blood test or heart test or lung test or liver test. Okay, so let's talk about types of tests. And then database. So any I can put it there and later we can discuss, right? So we can put database here and then later we can take a look at this. What's next? Or what other classes can there be? Say that she is so is she a collection of things? No, then that should not be of our concern the UML modeling, right? Because we are concerned about collection of things. Visits, that's a good one because the patient visits, they directly relate to the revenue, right? So let's say patient visit. So here, my classes here are a little bit messy, right? So if you can organize them in a better way, you can do it. Are there any more classes that we should be documenting? I guess that's pretty much it, right? We have patients, types of tests, and database, and we have BOs. Okay, so let's say we are all set here. And now the next step is to establish relationships or associations. So let's see, when will a patient be billed, or only when they have a visit? Okay, that's good. So then my next question is, okay, I give you two options, right? So yes, patients, they definitely relate to patient visits, right? So let's establish the association here. So you can do that by, so if you put your cursor close to one class, then you are able to see that, okay, you are able to draw a line between this class and the other one. So I am just connecting patient and patient visits. I saw Alexa was raising her hand. So later I will get to you. Let's first deal with the relationship between patient and patients, and then I can throw my next question to you. So okay, so when we draw this line, right, you notice that there is an arrow, and I say that if we are representing a generic association, we do not need an arrow here, right? If we have an arrow here in the UML diagram, it will mean some other kind of relationship. So we want to make the arrow disappear. So to do that, you select this line, and we go to this more option. The more option is at the upper right side of your screen. So you click it, and then in this drop-down list of endpoint, you click it and you choose this none, and then the arrow should go away. Okay, because we want here, let's just assume that this relationship is like generic, and so we don't want any arrows. Your cursor is still active on this line. You should be able to see a very, very shaded or shallow box. But if you move your cursor to it, you will see that you have this option to add multiplicity. Okay, but before we add multiplicity, let me just refresh your mind of this case, right? So they say, a patient visit should take place without any diagnostic test, that we know. And number 3, patients are established in the database prior to the first patient visit. So with this information, that means each patient is associated with what kind of multiplicity of patient visits? 0, 1. Can a patient have multiple visits? 0, too many on the patient side, patient visit side, right? Okay. How about the multiplicity on the patient side? Like each patient visit is associated with how many patients? 1 patient, right? Because let's think about like this patient Abby's visit on this day is only related to Abby, right? Okay, so now we can do this multiplicity. To do that, you just click this line and then you select this add multiplicities. So by default, you will have this many-to-many relationship, but you can just double click it to edit it. So here we just need to change the multiplicity on the patient side into this 1 and only 1. Okay, so you guys did a great job identifying this minimum 0 for the patients. So for those of you who feel a little bit confused about this 0, let me just explain, right? So because here we have our third assumption that says patients are already established in some kind of data set before their first visit, right? That means that they do not necessarily have to visit. They do not necessarily have to visit. So that's why here the minimum can be 0, right? And I give the example of me making a doctor's appointment, but I decide not to show up. So that is the case for the 0. And for multiple, this is because for one patient, right? For example, for Abby, she can pay this doctor a visit or visits multiple times during the year. For example, for like re-examining something, right? So that should be intuitive too. Okay. So now let's look at the tests, type of tests. So now my question is, should we establish a link between patients and tests? Or are there, okay. Should we establish a link between patients and tests? And should we establish a link between patient visits and types of tests? So that is to say, like, should we do this? Or are there any lines that we can keep and some can be dropped? Let me just make us look better. So let's first think about this association between types of tests and patient visit. So here, there should be a link, right? Because the tests can only be performed when there is a patient visit, right? So if we were to do the multiplicity here, let's first add this default here. So, and then we edit. So let's first consider the multiplicity on the test side. So this is saying that each patient visit is associated with what kind of multiplicity of types of tests, 0 or more, right? Okay, so 0 makes sense because the patient may not need any test, right? And multiple makes sense because let's say we need both a blood test and other kind of tests, right? So that makes sense. So yeah, I think we can keep the default 0 or multiple. Any questions here? Okay. What about the side on the patient visit? Each type of test is associated with what kind of multiplicity of patient visit? Each type of test. And remember that we already established a database of all kinds of tests that could be utilized, right? But they may not be applied. So with that assumption, what kind of multiplicity could that be? So let's first think about the minimum. Each type of test can be associated with minimum of how many patient visits. The tests or services are established in the database before they are used by the doctor and applied to the patients. So I can help you with that. And this is the challenging part. But before I explain, I want to hear others' voices. But you're on the good track here. The question is, when we are dealing with the multiplicity on the patient visits associated to the type of test, what should be the minimum multiplicity on the patient visit? So we're looking at each type of test to the patient visit, 0. Okay, so you say that the minimum is 0, and why is that? So you are talking about this test, but let's say we're looking at this patient visit and types of tests, right? Because of a patient visit can take place without any, that is already established. That is this multiplicity, right? Because they said each patient visit can be associated with 0 tests. That's number 1. So now with the information in number 2, what will be the minimum? Brandon was correct. I just want you to explain better why 0 makes sense. So maybe I can help with this. So number 2, it says all these tests are established in a database. So here you can think of it as Dr. Franklin has, let's say, predefined 100 types of tests. Let's say there are some common ones like blood tests and other kind of disease tests, but there are some very rare tests that almost no patient will need it. I can't think of such kind of test, but you can imagine one. And so that means we have all these types of tests already established. But some of these tests, because these are so rare, right? So they may not be actually applied to any patient visit. So that is why here, based on the description, this type of test, one type of test may associate with a minimum of 0 patient visit. However, one type of test, especially for the common ones, like a blood test, it can be applied to multiple patients during their visits. So that is why here, if we were to add this multiplicity on the patient side, patient visit side, it should also be 0 to multiple. Does that make sense, class? Yeah, that's mainly because of the second assumption that we made. Let me see, how can I add that? Okay, here we go. Okay, are we okay with this minimum of 0 and maximum multiple on the patient visit side from the types of tests? Okay, so now the question, should we keep this association between patients and types of tests? Or do you think with this linkage via patient visit is just enough? Right? So because we said that the only way patients can be associated with tests is via the patient visit, right? So then we already model that relationship. So here it's not necessary to model directly from patients to types of tests because that can be inferred from this relationship. Okay, so essentially what we are doing here is just patients to patient visits, and then patient visits to types of tests. So I want to put them on the horizontal line here so that they look better. And we have still one item left. So let's first look at database. So should database be a class of interest here? Is it a collection of things? Collection of tests, the information is saved in a database. So a database is, you can just think of it as, let's say, a file that has all the information about the tests for the customers or other things, right? So database itself, it is not a collection of things, right? Like I can say that this roster is a database of all the students, but there's nothing more beyond that. So it is not a collection of things, whereas tests, you have different types of tests. Okay, that makes sense too. Okay. Yeah, but Alexa, is it, did I make it clear that why database is not a class of interest here? Unless, let's say you have a business, you sell databases for revenue. In that case, databases are your products. Then you can say, yes, database is a class of interest. But here, the database is just some kind of like an infrastructure to support the storage of information, right? So here, let's remove the database. Now, interesting thing, bills. So let's look at the bills, or you can say invoices, right? So clearly, if I were to do the association, where should bill connect to? Okay, so I think that makes sense. So let's do this connection. Okay, first to patient visit, then to types of tests. Okay, do the class agree? The bills should be associated to patient visits and types of tests. Okay, now let's look at the multiplicity. So I can invite some of you to come on stage and do the multiplicity. So let's first look at the multiplicity on this association, like between bills and patient visits. So let's take a look at the multiplicities in these two relationships. So first, let's look at between bills and patient visits. So let's first look at this, the multiplicity next to bills. And this says one patient visit is associated with one and only one bill. That should be correct, right? Because from the description, we know that the doctor bills one amount for that visit, right? So then, yes, one visit is associated with one bill. And now on this side, on the patient visit side, one bill is associated with one patient visit. And I think that also makes sense. This one-to-one relationship makes sense, like bill and the patient visit, right? Okay, so that's correct. And let's look at the relationship between bills and types of tests. Let's first look at the one next to types of tests. So this is saying each bill is associated with 0 or multiple tests. This is correct, right? Because the 0 happens when the patient visits without conducting any tests. But in that case, the patient still pays for the visit fee. And the multiple makes sense because when the patient does conduct tests, then they will get billed, right? So here the 0 to multiple on the types of tests, that is correct. Lastly, the one next to bills. So this one is saying that each type of test is associated with one and only one bill. Okay, so any comments, question here? Because I have a different answer here. Change your maximum into many, right? Because if you think about blood tests, it can be applied to multiple patients and therefore reflected in multiple bills. Would you revise your minimum? This we talk about, like the second assumption here, like all these tests are established in the database. So some rare tests will never be applied. 0 or many or 1 or many. Did the class get the idea why this should be 0 or many? Okay, so let me explain one more time. So the reason why here the minimum is 0 is that we said that there could be some type of test that are never applied because it is so rare, but that type of test is available. It's just never being applied. And therefore, it will never reflect it in any bills. But for the type of test that is very common, for example, a regular blood test, then different patients may need the same type of test, and therefore it will be reflected in different bills. So that is why here it is this many-to-many relationship. And now let me ask you this question. So here, can we theoretically merge bills and patient visits? No. Okay. But why not? Because I would argue that bills and the patient visits, they are essentially the same. They represent the same thing. Because first of all, they have one-to-one relationships. And second of all, they have the same kind of relationship with types of tests. Because if you look at it, bills and tests, it's a same many-to-many relationship. Patient visits to types of tests, it's the same many-to-many relationship. So alternatively, like if you do this is correct. It's just that for okay. So for efficiency perspective, because for any of these information, we have to store that information somewhere. So in the chapter 4, we are going to learn how to convert these into actual tables that we are going to store in an information system. So that means here you are saving an extra table in the system. So that will cause some like extra storage consumption. So usually you can just merge bills and patient visits. So what you can do is that you say patient visit in parentheses bills. So because they are the same thing here. And then you can just remove the bills and its other related associations. So in the end, you will only have these 3 classes. Does this make sense? Okay. So we have 10 more minutes, and I think we can continue with our next concept. Okay. So is this practice okay with you? Like, are we on the same page here? Okay. And so for the Lucidchart, you don't have to worry about saving it anywhere. It's already on the cloud. So that means if you close this website and the next time you log in using your same account, then these diagrams should be there still, right? So you don't have to worry about downloading it or saving it. Okay, so the next concept that we have is about the attributes. I think we touched upon this concept last time. So we say that for each class, right, we need some attributes to describe their characteristics. So here, let's say we have a class called pets. Then the attributes can be their ID, which can be their microchip embedded under their ear. Right now, nowadays people do that, and their name, their age, and their breed. So here we say that for each of these records, we call them an instance, right? And when it comes to attributes, we are in this UML diagram and also in the database, we have to consider primary keys and foreign keys. I don't know if you guys have learned about these concepts. I know some of you are taking analytics related courses. So for those of you, you may already learned about this, but let's say we start fresh here. So primary keys, what are these? So these are just attributes that uniquely define an instance. Let's say for pets, right? So for dogs, nowadays they have these microchips inserted under their ear. So these basically represent like a serial number for each dog. And these are unique, right? So which means you can use the serial number to uniquely represent each dog or each cat. So that's an example of primary key. And also our RUID, right? That 6 digits, that is also a primary key because that ID uniquely identifies each one of us in school, okay? So we'll talk about foreign key next time, but let's look at primary key. What kind of property should it have? So we said that this primary key is basically an attribute, or it can be a combination of attributes that can uniquely identify each instance. And because we want to uniquely identify each instance, we do not want this value to be null. And if we want to identify someone, we don't want this attribute to change over time, right? So let's look at these questions. Let's discuss. Okay, should we use social security numbers as primary keys to, let's say, for the United States, if we want to have a database of all people, and should we use social security number as primary key? Okay, someone says yes. Are there no answers? Okay, so let's look at these criteria. Okay, so first of all, yes, social security numbers, they are unique, right? There's no same number for 2 individuals. But it violates the second criteria. social security number can be null because one person may not have a social security number. Okay. So that is why we cannot use social security number as a primary key because it can be null for certain individuals, right? Which means certain individuals may not have social security numbers. Okay. Does it make sense? Right? Because if you want to uniquely identify someone, and if you say social security number, and then if someone do not have social security number, how can you identify them? Right? So that's the reason why SSN cannot be used as primary key. What about the second one? Can we use person's name? Like, for example, combination of first and last name or even middle name? No? Why? Yeah, they can have the same name, right? It's very common that like even with last name, right? It's very common that you have duplicated names or same name. The main reason is that it violates the first rule, right? It's not unique. Okay. Now, the third example, can we use phone numbers as primary keys? You are saying that it violates which criteria? It has the area code N. Okay, but why it's not a primary key? Let me go to, then it violates both the second and also third rule, right? So, yeah, for kids, yeah, they don't have phone number. Therefore, that's a null value. And also because we can change our phone number through time, right? I myself changed my phone number recently. So yeah, like that cannot work. Lastly, let's say for school, Rutgers University or other institutions, can they assign some kind of serial number to represent each individual and they manage it? The last one already give you the answer. So the best practice to assign primary key is that, let's say for a firm, and if they want to identify their employees, they usually assign employees a serial number to as primary key instead of using their SSN. And of course, SSN is a protected information, right? And also name, no name and no phone, they use their own system. So that's why we have our school ID, RUID, right? Whenever we go to any places in school, they say, what is your net ID? What is your RUID, right? So that's how they can uniquely identify each one of the individual in the organization. So I think I'll leave these contents to next time because I think the practice really is a little bit overwhelming, right? And to keep a consistent pace with other sections, let's just stop here. So I made a decision that we are gonna postpone the deadline for the second assignment and also the third quiz because next Monday we want to continue with this content.